Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Solid Waste Disposal Measurement Act workshop for state agencies. This is the first of two workshops. The second will be held on March 11, the same room at the same time. And it will also be webcast. Thank you for coming, and welcome to those of you that are joining us via the webcast. Okay. For those of you that are tuning into the webcast, as we go along, you may email questions to SIERRARM, standing for Sierra Room, at the Cal EPA, CALEPA.ca.gov. So we have them when we get to the questions and answer session toward the later part of the workshop. It also should be posted on the webcast screen, the email address. A few safety and housekeeping details to go over. We have two exits doors in case of an emergency. If you go out this door, you would go to your left. If you go out the back door, you go to your right and down the stairs. In the event of a fire alarm, we are required to evacuate this room immediately. Please take your valuables with you and do not use the elevators. While staff will endeavor to assist you to the nearest exit, you should also know that you may find an exit door by following the ceiling-mounted exit signs. Okay, evacuees will exit down the stairs and possibly to a relocation site across the street. If you cannot use the stairs, you will be directed to a protective vestibule inside a stairwell. Should we have to relocate out of the building, please obey all traffic signals and exercise caution crossing the street. Drinking fountains and restrooms are out the back door to your left, all the way to the end, and make another left, and they're on the right. Again, drinking fountains in the restrooms. We do encourage recycling efforts in this building. Containers are located in the aisles, in the hallways as well as in each room. And I'm going to introduce to you Deborah Custic. Deborah is the lead for our team for state agencies, and she's going to do the presentation for you.
Good afternoon. Thank you all again for coming. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, this is not a very big room, so. So we're going to go over basically a lot of information today, and we found it works better if we hold questions to the end. So if you have questions, if you're listening in on the webcast, go ahead and email them as you think of them, and when we get to the question and answer session, we'll cover those. But if you're in the room here, jot them down and keep them in your mind, and then we'll go over them when we get to that point, okay? So what we'll cover today is, I'll give you the big concept of where we're at, is we're focusing on program implementation. That's the really big shift that SB 1016 made for state agencies and for local jurisdictions. The focus is on program implementation, okay? And then we'll run through how the new disposal measurement system works, because we haven't changed a lot of things, except for the big shift from measuring diversion to measuring disposal. So we'll go over how all those numbers work out and things like that. Okay. I want to give you a little bit of background on how we arrived at this point with having 1016 and how these changes came about. Okay. We'll give you some benefits, how we crunched all the numbers, what we actually do with those numbers once we get them, how we compare them, and what that means to you, and then how it affects our reporting and review cycles. Okay. So why did we change it? All right. A lot of it came from stakeholder workshops that we conducted primarily with jurisdictions, because the jurisdictions were really finding that their system was very, very inaccurate, untimely. They were waiting 18 to 24 months to get their numbers back. There was a lot of estimating and calculating done on both the part of local jurisdictions and state agencies. So overwhelmingly, what we heard back was that they wanted something that worked better. So SB 1016, through those stakeholder workshops, we got a lot of feedback. We pulled the information together and we presented it to our board in November of '05. And those comments and feedback formed the basis of SB 1016, which was carried by Senator Wiggins. Okay. And then in September of 2008. It was passed into law, signed by the governor, and it actually received no votes in going through the legislature, which is just really phenomenal. That doesn't happen very often. So it had a lot of support for making these changes. Okay. So that's kind of how we arrived here today. So what they asked for in switching to SB 1016 was to focus on programs rather than number counting and crunching and all of that. So that's a big shift that I had mentioned already. It maintains the 50% diversion mandate. That does not go away. We're still required to divert 50% of the waste that goes to landfill. That hasn't changed. But what we're doing is we're measuring that in terms of disposal instead of diversion, because measuring disposal is just so much easier than quantifying diversion. Okay, and that's what leads us to some increased accuracy for state agencies, is since we have a much better handle on what's being disposed than diverted, it will give us more solid numbers. Okay, and best of all, it eliminates your need to do an annual generation study. Okay. So again, and I may sound like a broken record saying program implementation, program implementation, program implementation, but I really want to make sure that that really, if you walk away with only one message from today, I want that to be it, that we're really focusing on programs versus the numbers. Yes, the numbers are still instructive to us, but they're not the end-all be-all, and we'll talk about that as we go along, but if I sound a little bit repetitive, that's why, that's kind of the take-home message from today. Okay, disposal is one factor that we'll be considering in evaluating your progress. Okay, it no longer determines your compliance. Okay, so before it was either you made 50% diversion and you were found in compliance, or you didn't and you weren't. Okay, now we look at your disposal numbers, and again, I'll go over in a bit about how we calculate them and compare them, but we look at the disposal as one factor in telling us how you're doing. We also look at your program implementation as another means of that. And then we just take the big picture and do what makes sense, essentially. So we're looking at, are you adequately implementing your programs? Are you doing everything you possibly could be doing that makes sense in order to divert your waste? Okay. So now you could actually be diverting a little bit more, or excuse me, see, we're still changing over that. You could be disposing a little bit more and still just doing everything you can to divert it, given marking conditions and things like that, and still be found in compliance. Okay. Okay, go ahead. Mm-hmm. So what we've got, some more of the benefits are it saves resources by not having to do the annual generation study every year. Okay, it allows you to spend more of your time and efforts on actually implementing those diversion programs that we've talked about. These are the programs that you've looked at, you've selected for your agency, and you get to put your time and resources into those. And it also allows us more time to be out in the field helping you do that. However, it does maintain the SWORD reporting database. That has not changed. It will look a little bit different, but largely similar. We're just making updates so that it can handle the data changes and different things that we'll be asking. But it will actually get simpler for you to fill out, not harder. Okay? We're not asking for any data in the new version of SWORD that we weren't already asking for before. Okay? And it creates a parallel system for state agencies and local jurisdictions. It makes it a little bit easier for us to do our job in that when we're out in a jurisdiction, out in a local government area, it's easier for us to have one big picture of what's going on in that area. What's going on at the local government level, the business level, at the state agency level. The numbers are just a little bit easier to factor in when they all kind of look the same. They're all on the same sort of basis of disposal. So here's how we actually calculate it. And don't get worried about the numbers and the equations you see up there. I'm going to walk through it so you all understand how it's factored. You don't need to do this. We will be calculating these numbers for you. It will be automated in the system. But I want to walk through it so you understand where those numbers are coming from. Okay? What we will do is we will take the agency specific, so the numbers for your specific agency only. Okay? We'll take the 2006 generation number. And the reason we're using 2006 is that's the last time each state agency got 100% full board compliance review. And we're taking the 2006 generation number in pounds, and that's a little bit different because in the past we've been doing things on tons, so we're switching to pounds. Okay, we'll take that generation in pounds, divide it by your number of employees, and then divide it by 365 days, and that will give us pounds per person per day, and that will become your new 50% equivalent disposal target. Okay, so there's your target. We will factor this once, calculate this once, and it won't be changing. Okay, it's something that we calculate just the one time. And in factoring the target, that's the only time we really use generation, because we know generation has its limitations. Okay, but we're working off the best available data that we can. So, but from here on out, we won't be needing to work with generation. Okay. Now, something that's really important to remember is that is your individual target. The target for this person is not the same for that person, for that person. A higher target is not better than a lower target or vice versa. They're individual case-by-case basis. So you can't compare them to each other. You can't compare it statewide. Everybody has their own numbers. Okay. So this is basically just a graphical representation of what I just walked you through. The reason we take, oh, can you back up one, Carrie? I'm sorry, I missed a little step there. When we take your 50%, we get your generation in pounds, divide it by employees, and divide it by 365 days. Skip this step. We actually then divide it by 2. And the reason we do that is to give you 50%, because we're assuming that everybody was exactly at 50% diversion. So if that was the case, then half of what you were generating would have been going to disposal, and the other half would have been going to diversion. So what we're trying to do is get an equivalent target to what exactly 50% disposal would have been. Okay, and then that's your target. If you were above that, great. If you were diverting more than that, that's still okay. That's great. If you were below it, obviously work to do, but it doesn't affect your target. Okay. Okay, go ahead. So this is a graphical representation of what I was talking about. Is on the left there, say it's 10 pounds per person per day is your 2006 generation. Half of that would have been your disposal, okay? And that's again in pounds per person per day, assuming that everybody was exactly at 50%. So the 5 pounds per person per day would be the target for that particular jurisdiction. Okay. Now, once you have the target, year to year, what we'll be doing is calculating your annual disposal rate. And this is a little simple, same thing, sort of same basic concept. And again, we'll be calculating this for you. You don't need to do all this math. It'll come through the system. Okay. We'll take your pounds disposed in that particular year, divide it by your number of employees, and divide it by 365 days in the year. And that will give us how many pounds per person per day your agency disposed in that given year. Okay. Now, we will do that based upon employees for every agency. Some agencies have already been providing us data on the number of, say, for a prison, they've been giving us the number of their inmates, or for a college, they've been giving us the number of students, parks, giving us a number of visitors, those sorts of things, giving us some kind of alternative information coming in. We will also calculate a target and an annual disposal rate based upon those indicators as well. Visitors, inmates, whatever. It doesn't replace your target based upon employees. It's just another piece of data that we can use to take into consideration when we're determining whether or not you're adequately implementing your programs.